Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Jamie and today I wanted to do some ASMR. And I just wanted to say, if you like these videos, please go ahead and subscribe. It really helps out my channel. And give me a like as well and leave me a comment about how you are or how you're doing. I wanted to get into looking over some maps. Sometimes I find that extremely relaxing. So I was cleaning out my garage today and I found this one. It's called The Making of Canada, British Columbia, produced by National Geographic Society, Gilbert, President and Chairman, Washington, D.C., April 1992. So it has like a brief story initially, and then on the other side it has a map. So just read this first pair. First I'm gonna get some tea. Would you like some as well? Sure, it's right over there. British Columbia's development has been shaped largely by its majestic and isolating terrain. Mountain ramparts that sweep from north to south long impeded overland access to the rest of Canada. A 19th century English journalist dismissed the lands as barren, cold mountain country that is not worth keeping. 50 railroads would not galvanize it into prosperity. He was wrong. Those cold mountains weren't barren, but full of natural resources. To export them to a world, a town sprang up on Burrard Inlet, outlet to the Pacific Ocean. There, in 1867, a former steamboat captain retired from the gold rush trade, arrived with an Indian wife, a yellow dog, some chickens, and a barrel of whiskey. Jack Neaton opened his barrel in the tavern, laying the foundations of Vancouver. Since then, British Columbia's rich and distant hinterlands have been wed to flashy Vancouver in a match sometimes as uneasy as it is indispensable. For a time after Europeans came, the millennial bond of native societies to forest and waters was little disturbed. But soon enough, the newcomers with their lodging, mining, fishing, diseases, and evangelizing changed that old life forever. The exploration of natural resources, sale of hydroelectricity, promotion of tourism, and trade with the Pacific Rim countries have opened new barrels for British Columbia's growth. Yet some haven't changed much. British Columbia still remains remote from the rest of Canada, at least philosophically. As the saying goes, it's 2,500 miles from Vancouver to Ottawa, but 25,000 from Ottawa to Vancouver. The independent cast of mind continues to shape the character of the province and its people. So this just kind of, I guess, shows the coast of British Columbia. It says it has different linguistic families. I will most definitely pronounce these wrong. see if I can just get it closer for you. And it shows their trade item and their trade route. So it has copper, moose hides, more moose hides, dried fish and oil, dried salmon to be specific in this region. You also have soap berries, moose hides, goat hides, more coming from the inlands. You have canoes, dried halibut, specifically in the coast Tismishanian. Maybe pronouncing that wrong. What do you think? You have herring, eggs, and dried seaweed flowing in and going towards the inlands. You have the Queen Charlotte Islands out here. Canoes, Dentalia shells. So seashells from the coast to the inlands. Obsidian, I believe that's a stone, right? Have cloaks, dried clam, dried fish, whalebone. So this is just showing the different, basically, linguistic regions and what they traded. It says, an extensive Aboriginal population occupied British Columbia's islands and shoreline, spreading inland along the many rivers for 10,000 years before Europeans arrived. More than 30 groups had developed, each with distinctive linguistic and cultural identity, name, and territory. In the northern interior, where resources were scattered, people lived in small nomadic groups. To the south, along the Fraser and Thompson rivers, abundant fish and game supported winter villages of sod-roofed pit houses. The coastal societies were highly structured, organized into households in which dozens of extended family members lived under the single roof of a large cedar dwelling. They had their own hunting grounds, fishing sites, and places for gathering berries, roots, and bark. They also devised unique rituals, songs, dances, stories, and crests depicting their histories and lineages. Households held potlatches, elaborate feasts, and performances, sometimes lasting several days. These celebrated initiations and marriages honored the dead, repaid debts, and demonstrated a chief's status through the giving away of food, tools, and clothing. With some stone adzes, chisels, knives, and mowls, coastal peoples fashioned the bark and wood of red cedar trees into clothing, baskets, boxes, mats, plank houses, totem poles, and dugout canoes. Canoes were extensive for trade, communication, and seal hunting to provision the large villages. And this map shows the fur trade post-established. So it has the Spanish from 1778 and 1796. And it has the Russian American Company 1799 to 1845, Northwest Company 1790, 1821, Pacific Fur Company 1811 to 1813, Hudson Bay Company 1821 to 1845. It has the routes, the trail, the explorer route, major maritime trade centers. Native group conventional name is Bella Coola or Nuxalk. So the fur trade, Captain James Cook and crew sailed to Nukuta Sound on March 29th, 1778. and traded for sea otters, pelts, and Nuchanulut villagers led by Chief, I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, Maquinya. Departing after a month, Cook's men sold the cargo in China for great profit. Fur trade soon was linked with London, Macau, Canton, and Boston. Britain's early lead in the maritime trade, it gave way to the American and Russian shipping dominance. So this basically brought fur all over the world. (1774 to 1845). And I promise we're getting to the bigger map. I just want to get into the details if that's okay. 1741, Alaska Churyakov explored the northwestern coast under the, I was going to say it sounds Russian, under the banner of Tsar Russia. Rumors of Russian exploits induced Spain, wary of intrusion into its New World empire, to send Juan Perez Hernandez from Mexico on a voyage of reconnaissance that took him to Queen Charlotte Islands and Nukuta Sound. On a similar mission in 1775, Juan Francisco de la Boga de Quadra probed to the Alexandria archipelago. Britons entered the arena in 1778 with James Cook's search for Pacific entrance to the Northwest Passage. Cook and crew were the first Europeans to have an appreciable contact with the natives. George Vancouver, who had served under Cook, surveyed the coast in detail from 1792 to 1794. Rupert's Land, the drainage area of Hudson Bay, was granted by royal charter to the Hudson Bay, the company HBC, in 1670, but not until 1774 did the company begin to move inland from York Factory. Competition for furs led Northwest Company traders through the Rockies down the Columbia River, headquartered at Montreal, and managed by the Scots, and Northwest Company traded furs from 1779 to 1821, before merging with HBC. Parliament then extended the company's monopoly to include the Northwestern Territory. But the early 1840s, a growing American presence in the Oregon countries jeopardized Fort Vancouver, HBC's district headquarters on the Columbia River. In response, HBC sent James Douglas to Vancouver Island in 1843 to build Fort Victoria. Okay, now we're getting to the big number. I'm gonna sit up for this. So this is what we just read. All of this. Oh. Then we also have it looks like here it shows the national park areas. Banff is very popular now. And Calgary, Red Deer. It shows provincial parks. Plateau Wilderness Park. Shows the fishing. Population density under 2 to 6, 7 to 18, and more than 18. Right there. And as you can see, Vancouver has commercial,
industrial, institutional, open space, provincial park, and residential. Lots of residential. This is British Columbia today as per the map in 1941 to 1993, I believe. It's a hub of transportation, manufacturing, and finance. Vancouver has grown to an international importance. Specific demand for British Columbia's lumber and other Canadian products such as coal, grain, and potash prompted specialized port facilities that now rank as Canada's first in tonnage. After World War II, plywood became a construction staple, and forest products industry became the fastest growing economic sector, aided by international investment as the pulp and the paper industry surged in the 1960s and 70s. Loggers once lived in temporary camps and fled trees directly into the ocean for floating to sawmills. Today, loggers are sometimes flown to cut timber that is hauled out into giant trucks. Small operations are no longer the norm. 10 forestry companies account for more than half of the timber harvest and 75% of the plywood and veneer manufacturing. Small canneries dotting the coast have been bypassed now that the salmon industry is concentrated at the mouths of the Skeena and Fraser rivers, where 4 companies process 80% of the salmon canned in the province. Of British Columbia's 3.2 million, 4 in 5 live in cities. Even as Vancouver booms and the Pacific trade and wealthy Hong Kong immigrants, Victoria cultivates its image as the 19th century English city for the tourist trade. In the outlying mill and mining towns, working class consciousness is strong and union membership has traditionally been high. Not until 1949 were the descendants of British Columbia original inhabitants allowed to vote in the provincial elections, sparking a cultural revival still strong among today's 100,000 natives. Native land claims. The Royal Proclamation of 1763, upheld elsewhere in Canada but rarely honored in British Columbia, recognizes Aboriginal land claims. Natives seek providential acknowledgement that they held little to the land before the contract, and that the title has not been extinguished, and that the settlements should be negotiated as in the rest of Canada. Until recently, British Columbia left liability for Native claims to the federal government. Now the province recognizes the need to share the responsibility. So this has farming and grazing, coastal forest, interior forest, glacier rock, cattle trail, passenger railroad, road trail. They're all along the same. Steamer, immigrants, log movement, cattle, fishery, hydroelectric route, where I don't see one. Do you see one? Mining, logging, pulp, paper mill, and sawmill. Resources, rails, and settlement. The Oregon Treaty of 1846 extended the mainland border between the U.S. and British North America along the 49th parallel, compromising the conflicting demands, the Yankees for the 54th, 40th boundary, and the British for one along the Columbia River. In 1849, Queen Victoria declared the Hudson's Bay Company the true and absolute lords of the proprietors of the new colony on Vancouver Island. Alarmed by the influx of gold seekers from California, Parliament in 1858 formed the mainland colony of British Columbia, merging it with Vancouver Island in 1866. Although British Columbia's gold proved small compared with California's, the value of gold extracted the first year neared $700,000 and averaged $3 million a year over the next decade, providing 75% of the colony's export revenue. Gold. More profitable in the long run, the Pacific salmon fishery became one of the world's most valuable. The first cannery opened in 1871 on the Fraser River. Others followed along the Nask and Skeena. Mechanizations brought salmon butchering machines, which threatened the jobs of Asians and Native workers in the early 1900s. We should be better off without Canada if we have no railway, thundered J.S. McKim, delegate of the Ottawa negotiations that led to British Columbia's entry into the Canadian Confederation. In 1871, British Columbia joined the Dominion of Canada with the assurance that transcontinental railway would be built within 10 years. In October 1880, the contract went to the syndicate, and that became the Canadian Pacific Railway Company, following the scandal-plagued negotiations that temporarily unseated Prime Minister John Macdonald. Thousands of Chinese were brought in to lay the rails, and conditions were so miserable that at least 600 laborers died. The first passenger train from Montreal reached Vancouver in 1887, promoting rapid urban growth. Settlers came from Ontario and Britain, joining others with migrated north from the U.S. Many immigrants headed for mines in the Kootenay region to extract silver, lead, gold, lead, zinc, and coal. In a decade of unprecedented growth, the province's population soared from 179,000 in 1901 to 392,500 in 1911. By 1900, logging had spread along the southern coast, expanding inland with improved transportation networks. Douglas fir, red cedar, and Stega spruce were milled into lumber, shinglings, pickets, spars, railroad ties, and mine timbers. Manhandling of the trees had given way to the oxen teams and horse teams and steam donkeys, powered winches, and used to pull logs along the skid roads. The Panama Canal opened markets for lumber on the American East Coast and in Europe, and by 1925 the logging industry provided the mainstay revenue. As a resource-based economy with its tradition of hard-knuckled capitalism and aggressive unionism continued to grow, so white-loved genitality persisted in the capital of Victoria, where many spoke with an English accent who, in 1870s March run, thinking of joining her husband in the far frontier Cariboo region would be pretty much like suggesting a trip to Bay. This map shows the gold rushes clamoring for gold. 25,000 people, mostly from California, sailed up the coast of the British Columbia in 1858, while hundreds of others came by land across the U.S. border. New Westminster, Victoria, and Yale prospered as supply towns. The search for gold had pushed to the placer mining country north of Yale by 1860. Begun in 1862, the Cariboo Wagon Road reached the remote mining town of Bakerville. 3 years later, waves of would-be gold barons helped open up the fledgling colony, but in 1862 also brought a devastating smallpox epidemic. In 1866, the native population had fallen from at least 150,000 before European contact to an estimated 40,000. Wow. So this is the gold area. The gold rush is the arrows. And the rotor trail is the small little red lines. And now we are finally getting to the big map.
You have the Hazelton Mountains, Prince Rupert, Dixon Entrance, Clarence Strait, Alaska, the Yukon Territory, the Northwest Territory, Caribou Mountains, Buffalo National Park, Trout Lake, Peerless Lake, Birch Mountains, Fox Creek, Red Deer, Calgary, Banff, where everyone wants to go. I haven't been yet. I really want to go. I'm hoping one day I can take like a romantic trip there because it's so pretty. Maybe do some hiking and take pictures. In Montana, Idaho, Washington, Vancouver, About 95% of British Columbia's forest land is owned by the province. Most of the timber harvested is cut by companies with long-term tenure arrangements. Carp Lake, Princeton, glaciers. I wonder how many glaciers it has now. Probably a lot less than that. I want to go. If you've been there, let me know in the comments to Banff. The pictures are always super gorgeous. Well, alright you guys. I hope you really alright you guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. I always find looking at maps very relaxing and gives you a different perspective. If you did like this video, go ahead and subscribe and like the video and leave me a comment because it really helps out. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys soon. Have a lovely day. Bye.